Refugee. A person who has been forced to leave his or her country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. But who are these people and what have they experienced during their treacherous journey? Tonight on SPICE, President Snoop will read his speech regarding refugee awareness. However, we will first provide context to this crucial topic by discussing the story of refugees throughout history. We will begin our journey with Constance snoring.
Victims of the Syrian refugee crisis represent the modern definition of refugee. Currently, the crisis is a well-known issue that has affected many other countries in addition to Syria itself. In early 2017, 6 years after the war's outbreak, 5 million Syrians had fled to other countries and over 6 million refugees had been involved in displacement conflicts within the country. And as a result, they have lost family members or friends to violence and have even suffered psychological and physical trauma, as well as detriments to their education. Most Syrian refugees currently reside in Middle Eastern countries such as Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq, while only slightly more than 10% of the refugees have been able to complete the treacherous task of fleeing to Europe.
Now let's go to Rosetta Stonehenge, who will take us back in time and show us just how refugees impacted the ancient world.
In the scope of world prosperity, the diaspora of different groups of people hasn't been completely negative. Just as trade routes such as the Silk Road, Columbian Exchange, and the Indian Ocean have spread cultures, technologies, and material goods, so have the movements of refugee migrations. An example of an empire who made the most out of the refugees they encountered can be found near Hadrian's Wall, circa 200 CE. These settlers fled from northern society due to the invasion of what is now Scotland by Roman Emperor Septimius Severus in 208 CE. These settlers had a mutually beneficial relationship with Rome through trade and protection from its army. Just as these northern refugees benefited from the Romans, Jews who were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula during the Spanish Inquisition benefited from the Ottoman Empire. These Sephardic Jews were accepted into the empire and brought the printing press to the Ottomans. Wealthy Jewish individuals even supported the Sultan financially. This proved useful for the Ottoman Empire, so in return the Jews were given their own city, Tiberias. The Jews experienced a new golden age that mirrored their previous prosperity in Spain. These refugees from the pre-modern world are not so different from the ones we see today. They have all escaped from harsh living conditions in their homeland to seek refuge in other nations.
Now we are going to visit the internal conflicts in a refugee-torn country with Anita Bath.
Oh hey! I didn't see you there. My name's Anita Bath, and the civil war in Syria has created the worst humanitarian crisis in our time. The crisis began with the start of the anti-government demonstrations in March of 2011, when local people in the city of Daraa were protesting for the release of 15 school children who were arrested and supposedly tortured after writing anti-government graffiti on the wall.
People were shocked and furious as unrest began to spread to other parts of the country.
In 2014, a group called Islamic State, or IS, began to take over large regions of their next-door neighbor, Iraq. IS is a violent militant group often persecuting Christians, Yazdis, and those who do not agree with their views. To try and stop IS, the United States used planes to attack IS fighters using airstrikes. In September of 2014, the U.S. members of parliament voted in favor of military action against IS in Syria as well.
After the war began, it killed a reported 470,000 people.
For many observers, today's challenges in Syria rekindle uncomfortable historical atrocities that occurred during World War II and the Holocaust.
The German annexation of Austria and the Sudetenland increased the number of people affected by Nazi restrictions. Jews, political opposers, and others were effectively removed from German public life and denied many rights.
Now we are going to switch to Diana Schloss-Renou, where she will discuss the dangers and risks of the physical journey.
Oh, it's you. Okay. Once you scope out a safe route to follow, the physical journey begins. In order to escape, refugees are going to have to sacrifice and choose. Imagine you are traveling at night with no lights, and you have to pile into a flimsy raft with 50 other people. Now, nobody knows how to swim or navigate a boat, and if you're lucky, you will arrive on Greek shore and begin the dangerous trek from northern Lepos to Europe. This is not the only route one can take. Others will head for Egypt and Turkey. Then they will either go to Libya or Alexandria, then finally Europe. All places have different aspects that will affect living conditions and expenses. So the refugees will have to make many choices affecting the future of their family lives. Female migration is not a new phenomenon, but it is increasing, as are female refugees and migrants. The journey of Syrian refugees are quite similar to that of North Korea, in that their families are separated and go through mental and physical painful processes. Hyo-So Lee, a North Korean refugee, recently shared her story. Her family began to plan the escape because of the death of close friends due to famine. She began a life of suspense and anxiety while she lived as an illegal refugee in China. This life and journey of a refugee is filled with turbulence and apprehension.
Now we are going to explore the data present in the acceptance of Syrian refugees in outside countries with Paige Turner.
The UN Refugees Agency plays a major role in organizing and distributing refugees worldwide, and is the reason many are able to escape war-torn countries. Turkey has accepted the most Syrian refugees in the world at a rate of 1.9 million since the beginning of the crisis. But life is still treacherous and difficult, as violent attacks are common in urban centers of dense Syrian population, and refugees survive in poor living conditions. Germany has received the most applications for asylum out of any country worldwide since the beginning of the crisis in 2011. The United Kingdom has a modest rate of acceptance with 7,000 since the beginning of the crisis. All are accepted under the Syrian Vulnerable Person Resettlement Program, or VRRP, which forges a path to direct asylum in the UK. Acceptance under this objective provides refugees with quicker access to student funds for higher education and documents for international travel. The United States of America does not provide assistance to incoming refugees in their quest for smooth assimilation into society. Upon their arrival, after their harrowing journeys, refugees are ostracized by the vast majority of the general public and heavily discriminated against via the government and various officials who are blinded by hate and color.
Back to you, Constance.
The truth is that there is widespread genocide in the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. A new Holocaust has seemingly begun, and the refugee numbers are just the tip of a genocidal iceberg. There are now more refugees than at any other time since World War I. The numbers have tripled since 9/11, and since the global war on terror has been launched. In the months before the genocide in Rwanda, UN officials and Western diplomats grew increasingly concerned about the great threat of political stability posed by millions of refugees and internally displaced persons in the Great Lakes region. With the flight of roughly 1 million Rwandan refugees, the epicenter of violence shifted from Rwanda to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Beginning in 1996, the area became the new battleground for continuing armed conflict between Rwanda's new government and the perpetrators of the crimes who fled there. It is estimated that more than 5 million people have died in the ongoing conflict in the Dominican Republic of Congo since the occurrence of the Rwandan genocide, showing that almost every case of genocide can be expected to come with enormous amounts of refugees.
And now, a word from our beloved activist president, Snoop Dogg.
Most people living in Western civilizations take things for granted, such as, having a stable food supply, clean water, access to education, the chance of living a prosperous life, blah blah. However, there are those who are less fortunate than us. There are children who are born into countries wrecked with corruption, and they live every day of their lives in fear of losing it. The journey for these people who have the courage to leave everything they have behind, the courage of these refugees, well, it's a treacherous one. So before you close your door on them, think of yourself, man. Think of your family and put yourself in their shoes and open your heart.
Well, that's it for this refugee special. Tune in next next week in order to find out whether or not fidget spinners can affect the Earth's center of gravity. I've been Justine Time. Thanks for watching and good night.
Ah, wicked chinks. Okay. That is where tens of millions.
Did you get that on film?